This is a fabulous 6-mark question that could easily come up in the GCSE new specification in 2018. It says plants carry out photosynthesis to produce glucose. Photosynthesis takes place in the cells of plant leaves. Describe how plants obtain all that they need for photosynthesis from the environment. In your answer, you should refer to processes, cell structures, and types of cells and tissues involved. There are many marks that can be gained in this question, and just by mentioning 2 processes, 2 cell structures, and 2 types of cell, you've pretty much got your marks. However, we have to refer back to the stem of the question because it asks us how we obtain all that they need, i.e. the raw materials, from the environment. So the first thing we're going to do is write out the equation for photosynthesis, which of course is carbon dioxide plus water, uses light, which goes over the arrow, to make glucose and oxygen. And by doing that, it structures our answer. We can see carbon dioxide, that's the first thing we're going to talk about, water, the second, and light, the third. So it asked in the question, how do they get the raw materials from the environment? So the first thing that we're going to say is that carbon dioxide comes from the air. There's no marks for that, but it just gives our answer some context. The next thing we're going to say is that it diffuses down a concentration gradient. Now straight away I've mentioned a process, diffuses. We're going to say it moves through stomata. I've talked about a cell structure. Through air spaces in the spongy mesophyll into mesophyll cells. So there I've mentioned the spongy mesophyll, which is a tissue, and mesophyll cells, which is a type of cell. And so there in my first paragraph, I've talked about processes, cell structures, and types of cell. Moving on to water, we're going to follow the same pattern. We're going to give it some context, for which there are no marks, but we need that context in there. Water comes from the soil. Then we're going to talk about a process by osmosis. Then we're going to talk about a cell type into root hair cells, where it travels to the leaf, through the xylem. There we go, mentioning a tissue, using transpiration stream, and that's a process that we've mentioned. Now at this point, we have got the maximum amount of marks. I didn't need to write that much for carbon dioxide, and I didn't need to write that much about water. However, I do need to make sure that I cover all 3 things needed for photosynthesis, and the third one is light. At this point, most students stopped here, and that meant that they could only get a maximum of 4 marks. It didn't matter how fabulous their answers were, they didn't talk about the 3 things needed for photosynthesis. So we're going to say that light is absorbed by chlorophyll in chloroplasts, which are a cell structure, and they are in the palisade layer or the mesophyll cells. Now this example answer I've given you includes all the possible marks really. You wouldn't be expected to write so much content, but what you do need to do is make sure that you've got processes, cell structures, and types of cells or tissues in there. And you need to make sure that you've covered all 3 bases, carbon dioxide, water, and light. And of course, this comes from starting off by writing the equation for photosynthesis, and that helps to guide you. Remember, quality of written communication is not included anymore in the new specification. However, you still need to add an element of context to your answers. I hope you found this video useful, and good luck with those 6 markers.